Hello and welcome to the Alastair Generationally Speaking podcast, where we look at bridging the generation gap by debunking myths, tackling stereotypes and sharing practical tips on how we can build stronger intergenerational connections. Now, today's guest is a stand-up comedian, presenter and founder of Anxiety Uncovered, helping young people, parents and teachers understand and manage anxiety through humour, storytelling and evidence-based tools. It's a great pleasure to chat with Joe Rowntree. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, good afternoon, Alastair. How are you?
I'm good, and I should have said fellow podcaster as well, who's done incredibly well with this podcast. So congratulations on that. And you, like me, have slightly pivoted your work over the last few years, where you've been an expert in communication and you're now looking particularly at young people's health and so on. We'll come to that in a moment, because I'm really interested in understanding the generations that you work with and the challenges that you help them through. And you're going to give some practical tips and tools to help them, but also parents, teachers and people around them. But I want to start off with you, if I may. And, looking at your generation, you're a millennial. Are you a typical millennial, do you think?
Am I a typical millennial? Well, I was born in 1982, so I had an analogue childhood and a digital adulthood. So I'm sort of in that messy middle. So I think I'm more classed as an xennial. Is this a term you're
absolutely right. Yeah, it's what they call a micro generation, and there's numerous micro generations. And xennial is a cusper generation, so it's between Gen X and millennial. Yeah, so you are a cusper. There you go.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so it was. I remember it was quite a big deal when Channel 5 came out. When I was growing up, we had 4 channels. Everyone was like, there's this new channel. And then obviously we went into, Game Boys, Game Gears. That was my sort of teenage life. And then, you look at life now and it's gone crazy. So, I'm an xennial.
You've got a little boy and, comparing your upbringing to his, where are the comparisons? Where are things massively different? And maybe where are there some similarities?
Well, I guess now I am so sensitive to everything that they are exposed to, because it's a big issue, as we know. My lad, he's 10, my daughter's 9, and we're in that realm of getting phones and stuff. So, I'm in smartphone-free childhood. I've been following them for a long time. So I got my lad a Balance phone, and this is a great company who are based in Barcelona. So it looks like a smartphone. It's not a brick phone. And even though it looks like it, it can't access social media. It can't access the internet. You can get certain child-friendly apps. So, that's been working. And he's just not that bothered with it. But there are a lot of kids in his year that have got smartphones. They're on TikTok. They're on internet. They've got literally access to the Wild West. And it's crazy. Yeah.
And actually, it's quite interesting, because peer pressure has always been an issue, of whatever age group. It just seems to be that much more in the microscope right now that, that it's an even bigger deal, that level of peer pressure now. So is it guidance from you, or is it just his own makeup that he's not... he's not bowing to that peer pressure, which other youngsters could, in terms of coming home and expecting you to follow suit of his mates' parents?
Yeah, I think because of the work that I do, and I'm a sort of advocate of young people and I work with young people, from a very young age, I've tried to educate him on what social media is. For example, when you go on social media, you are a customer, you are a consumer, and they will feed you information to try and keep you on the platform as long as possible. And they're tracking you. And often the things they will show you is the negative stuff to scare you, because we tend to get attracted to negative stuff more. That's why negativity sells. And, if you're not on there selling something, then you are the customer. And I think especially young people, teenagers, when they know that, when they're actually aware that they've been manipulated, they're a bit, hang on a minute. No, I didn't think it was like this. And I think they're a lot more against it now. They're a lot more aware of it. For example, I was in school the other day and I said, and this was year 11, so these are 15, 16, I said, put your hands up if you were given a smartphone in the last, sort of 5-10 years, most of them put their hands up. And I said, put your hands up if you would have preferred not to have been given the smartphone when you did, i.e. left a lot later. And I'd say 95% of them put their hand up, which was quite illuminating.
That's really telling, yeah. And one of the things that we're seeing now is because people are aware of the damage or the potential damage that these devices can cause, I'm actually quite, I don't know about you, but I'm actually quite positive about the next generation because parents are more savvy to it and therefore more aware and won't fall into the same issues that parents before them have gone through who didn't know.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little bit like smoking, when smoking was cool and everyone thought it was all right and, actors and doctors were telling you that it was good for you. I think we'll look back and be like, what were we doing? Now look at all the evidence that's come out. I mean, all the evidence is there, Jonathan Haidt, anxious generation. I mean, you can't deny it now. I think a few years back, it was like everyone was guessing, but now the evidence is there, especially with, girls and Instagram. But this is not just UK. This is worldwide. Mental health went down the Swanee in sort of 2010 12 with the advent of the smartphone and Instagram. So I think we'll just look back and just be like, wow, I can't believe that those social media companies were allowed to do it. But then there'll be another challenge. There'll be AI. There'll be something else. I mean, it used to be comic books, didn't it? And everyone was like, well, comic books, it's polluting the generation. But I think every generation has its thing.
In later on, we're going to be talking to your colleague Emma Clark, who works with you, because she's going to be in Australia, and she's going to give me, and I'm sure you as well, some direct feedback of how the ban on social media for under 16s is going, which has been massive in the news towards the end of 2025. What's your view on banning social media for under 16s? In terms of, there's a view that says that actually social media is okay if it's done well and there's good parental guidance, or actually, no, just ban it and just don't put it in temptation. Where do you come from on all of that?
So I think parents have a lot of responsibility for this. If you have a parent who cares and understands and really gets what social media and a smartphone does to the growing adolescent brain, then I don't see any problem with having a sort of co-dialogue, a co-relationship between smartphone, because it is like another entity. It's like smartphone, social media, parent and child. And I was reading something just last night about how, if there's, I guess, transparency and the parent can look at the phone and there's digital literacy, there's digital understanding, and there's routines and stuff put in place. The amount of times, the amount of hours that you are on it. For example, the first hour of the day and the last hour of the day, that's when you're most vulnerable to these things. So you wouldn't have it then. You wouldn't have your mobile phone in the bedroom. Whole family charges phones downstairs. You have a little cheap IKEA alarm clock on the bedside table. And I've just chucked to loads. There's 10 things there, like 10 little habit tweaks. As long as that is happening and agreed with, then, it's not necessarily social media or the smartphone that is a problem. It's how we are using it, which is a problem, and, our education around it. But on the other side of that, there are parents that, for whatever reason, don't parent, can't parent, they're too busy, and they're often using the smartphone, the tablet, as a way to parent. And they're literally going, right, have that 8 hours a day because you're not bothering me. And I've been that parent. I'm not standing here going, I'm a perfect parent, because I'm not, because I've used the smartphone and the tablet to go, just have that for a couple of hours and just give me a bit of peace and quiet. So to have a complete blanket ban, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? But I just think because the evidence is undeniable, adolescence, the teenage brain, as we know, doesn't stop developing until sort of mid-20s. And because social media is so toxic and teenagers are vulnerable, because often it's not about, what they're watching. It's about how they feel about themselves when they're watching it. And I think,
and it's about the conversation that you have around the dinner table afterwards, and is indeed that conversation taking place. And I'm very much with you that it's about how something's done. But I have to say that I'm erring on the side of the ban purely because there's children who aren't going to be protected by their parents and the family unit for whatever reason. There's a multitude of them, and therefore it's adding in protection for those people who don't have the parental protection.
Yeah, and also maybe those parents that just don't have the confidence and the relationship with their kids. A lot of kids these days, this is why, we work in schools. That's where we met Alastair, didn't we? The behaviour has changed exponentially in the last 5 years. Again, LBC this morning, teachers are leaving the profession because they don't feel safe in the classroom. Young people are almost running the show. They're telling parents what to do. So I think the ban for these parents, it almost gives them, a way just to go, oh, thank you, because there's nothing I can do about it. And interestingly, I was speaking to Emma about this, and she was saying that apparently it's affecting a lot of the outback kids, the kids that are further out in the sticks, who don't really have that many connections. There's the whole idea of, play-based childhood versus phone-based childhood. The ones that are out, in the outback, that the phone was actually a positive thing because it helped them stay connected. So I'm sure Emma will elucidate on that more when you talk to her.
Well, again, it's one of those things that you bring in a blanket policy, it's going to have a myriad of reactions and knock-on effects to people for different things. Let's move on away from phones for a second and talk maybe about education, because again, it's an area that you and I both know about, having worked in schools. And, you look at the education system and, you and I were in schools when kids were allowed to use their smartphones. They're now not, because people recognise. But we've also seen a direction in the way that teaching takes place and things. And for you, looking at that, what impact do you think that's having on the generations of tomorrow that's different from the generations today? And the reason I say it is because to help people understand who are of older generations, to help them understand what's actually happening in schools in terms of the style of education, the way that children learn today.
Well, I don't think every school has got a handle on it. I was in a school the other day in Birmingham, and their policy is that you hand the phone in at the beginning of the day, you get it on the way out. Some phones have these little pouches where you can still have the phone on you, but you can't get into it. So it's like a magnetically sealed pouch. And you get some schools, I'm sure you've seen this recently, where you're walking around and they're all in it on the corridor. So there's still not, I guess, this level of consistency across the country. There's different towns and different regions that do it. But I think it is affecting education without a doubt. Attention spans are shorter. I've certainly had to adapt my style of delivery to suit the smartphone era. You almost have to be a bit like an influencer. You have to bounce around like a YouTuber because, their attention spans are so short. In some sessions, I can almost see them just swiping left with their eyes. It's like, next one, bored. It's like you've got to keep them active. You've got to keep them alert because their attention spans are so short. And also,
and that says a lot. That says a lot about the school teaching styles, how they might have had to adapt, and how parenting styles are having to adapt because of the consequences of the environment that the children are growing up in.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think some teachers just can't teach because kids have tapped out of education. Did a session the other day, and I'd say I'm a fairly engaging sort of guy, and I've got a lot of tricks in the locker, 20 years. But this group, they were impenetrable. They were like, nah, mate, it doesn't matter what you say. We're not going to listen to you. They're just there, like heads on the tables. Half of them are asleep. And because they're probably in the bedrooms for most of the night, gaming because, they haven't had any sleep. And that's another issue as well. And also as well, I want to say, it's very easy just to catastrophize all this stuff and say this generation are out of control and, they've got low attention spans, because there's another chunk of them, and we've been into loads of schools where you've got delightful young people, and they've got a handle on this stuff, and there is digital and emotional literacy. So I think, we tend to sometimes, I think, just sensationalize it a little bit and just think that, the whole generation is like that. And I don't think that's true.
And let's go on now to, which in fairness, it's intrinsically linked to mental health in youngsters, something that you specialise in. You talk about your work with Anxiety Uncovered that you and Emma work with. And, you referenced Jonathan Haidt's book earlier on, The Anxious Generation, a book which I read and I also quoted in my book. In terms of people, I really want to give some people some practical tips and advice, because I think, the debate is over. We know that they are an anxious generation. Anxiety is higher than it's ever been in youngsters. And therefore, let's now just, in our last 15 minutes, let's look at the ways that parents and teachers and adults can spot it and then help with that anxiety. So first of all, anxiety, how does it present itself in schools and at home?
So anxiety rarely shows up as like mass panic. If you're having a panic attack, that's almost like the end result. Most of the end result of a lot of sort of just repeated thoughts and feelings. But I guess anxiety presents itself as avoidance, as irritability, perfectionism, procrastination, physical complaints. So it's really the behaviour of these young people which should be looked at. That's the communication.
So are you saying that youngsters are unlikely to say, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that? It's going to more likely manifest itself in some form of different behaviour pattern?
I think there's a lot that do, and I think a lot of them say it because it's the trendy thing to say. I think, and we know this in our communication skills workshops, we'll turn up, and just for the people that don't know, Alastair and I work for a great charity called Talk the Talk, and we go in and we help young people with their oracy and their public speaking, and throughout a workshop we'll get them to stand up and present. Now, we go into schools and sometimes we have delightful days, and some days we'll go in and half the room are anxious and some of them are up for it, and others that, sort of don't even come in because they know that they're going to have to speak in front of their peers. And a lot of them will say, I can't do this because I'm anxious. I've got anxiety. And it's like, good, you should have anxiety because you're a human being. And if you didn't have it, I'd be a bit worried for you. So I think a lot of it is just a lack of understanding. And I think people are almost weaponizing it to go, I can't do it, I'm too anxious. Anxiety is only really an issue when it tips over into an anxiety disorder, when it starts actually affecting your life, which it did me. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. I'm someone who is quite highly anxious. I would say high function anxiety. In July, I got diagnosed officially as having ADHD. So that was quite illuminating in terms of actually finding that out at 43 and then looking back at my life and then realizing, okay, all those behaviors were because I had a different brain. But it really came out of me as a result of, a lot of stupid decisions, to be honest. 15 years ago, I was on a stag do in Barcelona in fancy dress and I got mugged and stabbed. I don't know if I've told you this, Alastair. So I got stabbed twice, once in the back and once in the leg. And as a result of that, I was, in a bit of a dark place, as you can imagine. I went through the Maudsley Hospital in South East London as an outpatient. So I went through full-blown treated PTSD, OCD. On top of that, I've got quite an anxious brain anyway. So you have a brain that's quite naturally anxious, put on top of that an anxiety disorder. I was in a pretty horrible place. And that's sort of why I'm so passionate about it, is because no one ever taught me what was going on inside my head. And this is the problem. I think a lot of teenagers, if they just understood how their brain worked, how their nervous system worked, and how they were linked, a bit about their thoughts and their beliefs and just how to manage themselves as human beings, then I think they would be able to manage this situation that they're going through a lot easier. I remember the first time I went to therapy when I was really, really struggling. And by the way, it took me 2 years to actually pluck up the courage to go to someone and say, I'm really struggling. I need some help. I remember going in there and just saying, I've got this voice inside my head that is just so persistent. It won't leave me alone. It constantly tells me I'm not good enough, that I'm going to die, and that everyone's judging me. All these thoughts. Honestly, it was so incessant to the point where I would just look forward to going to sleep, because that's the only time that I would ever get any rest from it. And I remember telling the counsellor this, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's quite normal. Most people have a little voice inside their head that sort of, tells them that they're not very good. It's called your inner critic, your inner dialogue, And I was like, yeah, but I've got these thoughts that, I'm always thinking about the future. And she's like, yeah, that's sort of mind reading. That one's catastrophizing. That's black and white thinking. There's a name for it. They're called cognitive distortions, thinking errors. I'm like, what? This is a thing? And then she gave me a handout, and I was like, yeah, this is what normal people think about. I'm like, why did no one tell me about it? Why did we not talk about this growing up? It's bonkers.
But that's a really interesting point, because a lot of people will say, especially adults, people of my age will often say, well, come on, it's stressful being young. It's stressful going through adolescence. Your hormones are all over the place. You're finding yourself in a world that's surrounded by adults, and you're about to become one of those adults. And that actually is very pressurized, very stressful, and it's anxious, but that's part of growing up. So the question is, at what point is that normal growing up, and at what point does it become, actually no, you need some more help than that, because this isn't just growing up? How do parents and teachers and other people manage to identify that difference and come up with a fairly balanced approach to a young person's mental health?
Well, I think the first thing is being able to create a dialogue with young people, which is what I'm doing in the workshops. And, rather than, what's wrong with you, or trying to get kids to go, oh, you don't want to think like that, you don't want to feel like that. It's almost like, look, help me understand what it is that you're going through. And I think there's not enough people out there that are willing just to sit with these young people and just tell them that what they're going through is completely normal. Because I think a lot of them, and we all do growing up, don't we? All think we're the weird one. We're the only one that's experiencing this. And what Emma and I do in the workshops is that we open up as adults, I'm 43, and say, look, I'm feeling a bit anxious now. I've spent my whole life feeling a bit anxious, but it doesn't mean that it should stop you doing things. If anything, I'm trying to educate people that anxiety is a superpower. It is something that if you manage it and you understand it, then it can help you achieve loads of things. And put on top of this, neurodivergency, and there's a big influx of this stuff now because of my wife. She works in SEND, and it's almost like you're in the minority if SEND, you don't.
Just for those who don't know, that's special educational needs.
Yeah, and that's in primary schools and secondary schools. So this is, neurodivergency. This is ADHD, autism, dyspraxia, dyslexia, all those things. And it's almost you're in the minority now if you don't have some sort of SEND need. And I think that's a lot to do with the smartphone, the generation we're in, low attention spans. Also, as well, I think it's to do with the fact that we've now got a language for these things, because growing up, it was almost like you were the weird one, or you were the one that just needed to have time out of lessons, or you're the twitchy one. I was always the one that couldn't focus, and it never got picked up the whole time. And I had to, I used medication for 15 years to just shut up that voice in my head. I wasn't sad, I wasn't depressed, because I'm quite an upbeat, optimistic guy. I just couldn't stop this thought process going on in my head. And someone said the other day, this is a great analogy for ADHD. It's like being given an F1 racing car with bicycle brakes. And I can relate that so much, because if you understand how to ride the racing car, then you're going to go off. You're going to go far. You're going to go fast. But if you don't know how to handle it, then you're going to get yourself in a right mess. So that right mess for me was. So
I was going to ask about the parenting adults generally, because you talked about having a conversation, which I think everyone would agree is absolutely the right way forward. What about those situations where, and especially at teenage years, we know that communication sometimes is a bit more challenging. So how do you manage to have that conversation with a youngster who's not really wanting to have that conversation? How do you facilitate something where you actually learn and you will make some progress?
I don't think I'm in a position to be able to give advice to other parents because I'm not an authority. I'm a parent myself, and the only thing I would say is that I think that the strength of what you get from your children is the strength of your relationship with them. It's like, how much time do you invest in them? How much time do you just spend hanging out with them? If you want to know about them, the worst thing you can do is say, how's your day at school? How are you feeling? Because they're not going to give you the answer then. You probably want to go out for a walk with them, or, go out shopping with them, or take them to a football game. And I think one thing that I do sometimes is, I say to my kids, do you want me to help you, or do you just want me to listen? And I think sometimes just listening without having any of the answers is the first step to them potentially opening up, because I think the more what's the matter and can I help you, and the more sort of helicopter parent we are, I think that the more kids tend to back off. It's almost like, you need to catch them unaware, and they just say it without even thinking about it. You have to, I find anyway, you have to be quite tactical if you want to get anything out of your kids.
I like the answer, the question of, do you want to help, or do you just want me to listen? Because I think men in particular, but parents as well, generally, they want to fix things. They want to make their child's life easier and less concerning and anxious for them. So just saying, actually, do you want me just to listen? I think is some great advice. What other sort of nuggets along the way have you learned that you have found have been really effective tools to help youngsters who are anxious, or maybe just generally to bridge that gap between, let's be honest, you're talking about millennial parents, alpha children, or Gen X parents and Gen Z children, bridging that generation gap. What other kind of things have you found that work really well?
I think with all this stuff, there is no quick fix, is there? I think, the best will in the world, you give all the techniques, everything that you need to know about how to manage yourself as a human being is out there. We live in the information age, the technological age, it's all out there. But the thing that we, I think, don't do is take the advice and actually do anything about it. The antidote to anxiety is taking action. And I think what I'm trying to do, so my generation growing up, we didn't have language for anxiety. If you felt nervous, you just got on with it. If you felt like any stress, it was just push through, push it away, push the feelings away, which is the worst thing you can do with anxiety, because the more you push it away, the more it stays. And I think what I'm doing now as an adult with two young kids is and this is the reason why I'm doing this, and reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, is I'm having to learn the language and having to sort of unpick a lot of the issues I had growing up. And what I'm doing now is trying to educate my children with all the things that I'm now using. So, for example, I tell my kids to breathe constantly all the time. And this is such a huge thing. And, you go into these sessions and you're getting these teenagers to breathe, and they're like, they don't take it seriously. And breathe. And I was like, the other day, loads of us know, I was never taught how to breathe properly. They'd be like, I've been breathing all my life, mate. And it's like, yeah, but really breathe and really sit with yourself. And, why do we breathe? Because we can literally change how we feel. So with my lad, he's a penalty taker. He plays football. So, for example, I've taught him the physiological sigh. So this is what all penalty takers do, and it's the quickest reset of your nervous system. This isn't a long-term anxiety fix, by the way. It's just a really good one for performance anxiety. So I've done it a few times whilst talking to you, Alastair. You wouldn't have even known. Did it a few times just before I came on the podcast. It's 2 inhalations through the nose. So it's one big and then another little one, and then a long extended exhale. So why you do that is that the first one, it obviously fills up the lungs, and when you breathe in through your nose, it releases nitric oxide, and the nitric oxide, it opens up your blood vessels, some more oxygen goes in. That little one at the end, that just pops the alveoli at the end of the lungs. That just is a signal to your body that you are safe in that moment. And then the long extended exhale, that's what stimulates something called the vagus nerve, taps into our parasympathetic nervous system, which allows us just to feel really, really calm in that moment. So it's a really good one for taking a penalty. And you see all the top players doing this. And when you go into the workshops and you talk about Ronaldo and Messi and Chloe Kelly, you know, that they do it before they take a penalty. They're like, oh, really? So it's just trying to introduce it in a way that they understand. And, you know, as teenagers, they just sort of want quick fixes. So, yeah, that's one little thing. But I think that the thing that really changed for me was when I was in my early 30s and I was really, really struggling. I had this voice inside my head, like I've already said, I couldn't shut it up. And I was going to try anything. Meditation, mindfulness, I thought it was a load of rubbish. I was like, yeah, meditation, it's just for old bald men in baggy robes and the chiming cymbals and ringing bells and lighting candles. That ain't for me. But I was desperate. I was going to try anything. So I joined the London School of Meditation. It was free, big house in Holland Park in London. And I went along and I was the youngest person there. And I would go and just sit in an empty room with a couple of people a lot older than me. I called them the elders. You know, some of these people are in like their 80s, 90s. And I'd sit on a chair. They would sit in front of me and we would just meditate. I didn't know what I was doing. I went back, kept going back, and I was like, this isn't working. But slowly but surely, I could see that I had a voice inside my head, the thoughts that were saying some horrible things. And I eventually started to get separation from them. I could almost see what they were doing. I could get distance from them. And I think as soon as you get that awareness between you and your thoughts, that's the first step to being able to sort of become free of anxiety. So, yeah, it's just self-management through going into your body first, then looking at certain thoughts that come up. For example, a good one is taking the thought to court. If you have a repetitive thought that keeps coming up, say, I'm not good enough, I'm not very good, everyone's going to laugh at me. You take the thought to court. You go, right, okay, let's put that under the microscope. Right, how true is that thought that you're not very good? Right, is it true? Is it 100% true? And if it is, let's try and find some evidence for it. And then you go, right, how true is the opposite? So I'm amazing at everything. Yeah, I never fail. You know, I'm perfect. How true is that? Let's try and find some evidence for it. Now, the middle ground is trying to look for something a bit more kinder, something a bit more compassionate that would help you rather than hold you back. So with all this, Alastair, I think it is about awareness of how we think and awareness of how we feel.
That's really, really helpful advice, and I think that's great. And actually, to be honest with you, that works across the board, whatever age you are.
Yeah.
You know, they're useful techniques. I want to finish off, Joe, with just some advice for youngsters, because you work with youngsters all the time, not just in the schools with your work, but just in your podcasts. And I've heard a few of the interviews where you've had some quite candid interviews with youngsters about their mental health. And I just want to ask what kind of, again, very quickly, just a couple of things to say to youngsters if they feel they're being anxious and they feel that they're struggling to get the words out, to have the conversation with parents, teachers, whoever it is. What's your starting point with those youngsters to help them voice their concerns?
I would say that it took me 2 years of keeping quiet, and it took me 20 seconds of insane courage to ask for help. So, and as soon as I did that, it was like a big pressure valve that was released. So I would say, talk to someone who you trust. If you can't speak to an adult, then there are lots of helplines. There's Couth, there's Shout, there's Anxiety UK. And there's always going to be someone out there that wants to help you. And the only way that we can get any advice or any help or any support is through having the courage to just say, I'm struggling. And if the first person ignores you and you don't get what you want, then keep asking, you know, keep just searching, because if you're really struggling, then, you know, you might not have the the power or the language to deal with it on your own.
That's great advice. And I think if youngsters keep hearing that advice, keep talking to people, keep the conversation going, whoever that conversation is. And even sometimes ask where, say, I just want you to listen. I don't want you to do anything about it. I just want you to listen. And I think that was that's one of the things that's really stuck with me from our chat today. Some really great thoughts there, Joe, and I love hearing about your experiences and how you've managed to turn those into positive experiences to help others. We're going to put all your socials in the in the show notes so people can find you at Anxiety Uncovered, and we'll put all the other stuff there as well. And hopefully we'll keep on spreading the word and help youngsters to hopefully feel a little less anxious than they are right now. So thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Cheers, Alastair.
Thanks, Joe. And thank you for listening. And don't forget, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. See you then. The Alastair Greener Generationally Speaking podcast was presented by me, Alastair Greener. It was recorded at Granary Studios and produced by James Jones. Please follow us and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more, visit generationnallyspeaking.co.uk.